This week's edition of New England Authors, we interview a banker who embezzled $40 million, ran from justice, then turned himself in, spending 18 years in prison. Here is the whole mesmerizing story. All right, we're fortunate to have Richard Mangone here, whose book is called Busted, and it's about his life from poverty to tremendous wealth to fugitive from justice to prison to religion. Have I got that straight?
That's good idea.
Welcome to the show,
Thank you
Richard.
very much.
Okay, so you came from the projects in East Boston?
Correct, yes.
Went into the Air Force?
Yes.
Took up accounting?
Yes.
Began working for Polaroid back in the good old days?
Yes.
How'd you get into banking?
Polaroid, when they hired me as controller of the credit union, began my banking career.
Yeah?
Yes.
So you worked as a controller for the company?
No, for the credit union. They actually hired me at the credit union.
Oh, was that a DSU?
It was called PCU, the
PCU.
Polaroid Credit Union. Yes.
Polaroid Credit Union.
It was a federal credit union in Massachusetts. Yes.
So, and then you got into another credit union? Or?
Yes, through Polaroid and in my ability to do what is right and within the credit union world, Polaroid came and asked me to look at this opportunity, and I did with Digital, and Digital hired me to start up a new credit union for them. As it was an employee benefit to the company.
So, by the way, what a beautiful outfit you have, half banker, half jailbird. We're going to get to the jailbird part in a little bit here. So you became, you became like the top person in this credit union, right?
That is correct. I was president and CEO of the credit union.
What was the name of the credit union?
It was called Digital Employees Federal Credit Union.
Digital Employees Federal Credit Union, which is still around.
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
and they're doing quite well, thank the Lord. I'm very happy that they survived through my misdeeds.
So you and a couple of accomplices started doing some real estate deals, and they were legitimate.
Yes,
initially they were legitimate. And you also played the stock market a little bit.
Yes, that's correct.
And you were making 25 grand a week.
Yes, that was
25 grand a week.
On average, that's what I was doing. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough, right?
No, never. Greed is a terrible thing.
So tell me some of the deals that you were pulling out. They were mostly real estate.
That is correct.
Was it like a slippery slope?
It ended up turning into a Ponzi scheme. It was a house of cards that fell only because of the way in which we were doing it, buying large housing projects, a lot of lots, subdivisions, and hotels, motels. And we were going along fine until the Tax Reform Act of '86, '87 that limited tax deductions for individual investors buying our properties. And once that happened, they limited it to $25,000, and consequently, we could not find buyers. So that's when the Ponzi scheme started, and we started reinvesting the property and having to build up the values much greater than what they were.
So you had all these properties that declined in values? Is that the idea? Or
not
what?
Declined in value, but stayed stagnant, and we couldn't sell them. So consequently, we had to refinance them as the loans came due. And as we refinanced them, we had to puff up the values. And that, of course, is illegal. And it was also illegal for me as the president and CEO to be borrowing the money in the first place, not disclosing my interest.
Now, yes, also, but before that, weren't the deals starting to get a little bit shady, or no?
Well, shady from the standpoint of they're all insiders doing the loans, yes.
Right.
There were board members that everybody was participating in these type of loans. And that's illegal.
Yeah.
And it was good that the house of cards broke, because it could have gotten even uglier than it was if things continued on.
Yeah. So you had some other misfortune in your life. Can you tell us about your son Douglas? You go through him in your book.
Yes. My son Douglas was 21, going to Roger Williams College. And on New Year's Eve in 1991, he was killed in a car accident on the way home about a mile from the house. And that was very tragic. And 3 months later, of course, I was indicted and let go from my job. And that was very difficult for my wife to bear that. She lost two of the men in the house within a few months.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for the family losing a son.
Right, right. So you were indicted just right after his death.
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
Were
a
you
couple months later.
expecting to be indicted?
Yes, we knew that it was coming because we had prior information that they were looking at some of the things that we were doing, and it was an issue. Yes.
So, but also your personality. You were making all this money, right?
Mm-hmm.
25K a week. You started personally getting out of control, right?
Yes, I was spending money foolishly and acting the playboy on Cape Cod and going to Vegas and Atlantic City and gambling. I was totally out of control. Yes.
Yeah, you did a lot of gambling.
Yes, quite extensive. Yes.
Drinking.
Not too much, just wine.
Fancy.
But enough to not enough to get in trouble.
Fancy cars.
Yes, yeah, Ferrari, Porsches, Mercedes. Yes.
Oh, the plural.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm sad to say we had about $600,000 worth of cars.
You were on the top of the world.
That's correct. Yes, I was.
Hubris.
Very. Yes.
Yeah.
Very hubris.
Yeah. So go back to the Ponzi scheme if you can. So you had all these properties. You couldn't get rid of them.
That's correct.
What did you have to do? Why didn't you just say, for the company, we're screwed?
Well, I think that you had a guest on a while back. He hit the nail right on the head. When you're doing things that are what we thought was gray, you don't really look at it from the standpoint of breaking the law. I don't think any of us ever thought prison time was coming. We were very ignorant to this, and of course, there's no excuse for the law.
Yeah.
But what happened to us was we felt that we could bail ourselves out of this by refinancing the properties and selling the properties. But from its inception, even though some of the transactions were legal, me being involved and other board members being involved, not disclosing our interest, was illegal.
Yeah.
So we got to call it what it is. It was we were making poor and evil choices each individual day. It was not good for us to be doing that.
Yeah. So an auditor came.
Yes. Yep, the feds came in and they looked at the books. They got a tip off from someone.
Yeah.
That we were doing some things that were wrong, and they came in and then they shut the Barnstable Community Federal Credit Union down, and from there they of course then they came up and evicted me from my job.
Yeah.
I was asked to leave the premises, and at that point in time I did.
Right.
Yeah.
This is New England Authors. We're talking with Richard Mangone. He's written a book called Busted, and it's about his life from being a banker on the right side of him to being a prisoner on the left side of him. What a difference. So there was a woman you call Penelope. I know you've changed names and
Yes,
some of the people in the book. So you called her Penelope, who cooperated with the authorities.
That is correct. Yeah,
Right.
she was hired by me because she was very bright and very articulate, and she knew all of the transactions. So once they got to her and worked out a deal with her, it was easy for them to put all the pieces together.
And she got a 6-month prison sentence or something
That is
like
correct.
that.
She got a light sentence, but it was warranted based on the fact that she had children and so on. And the feds will always go for the weakest link, and that was the weakest link in the chain.
To uncover all the secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it needed to be uncovered. So it wasn't as if we were doing things that were so shiny. I'm happy that it occurred, only because looking back at it, it was something we should not have been doing in the first place.
So you knew you were guilty?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You're listening to New England Authors. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Richard Mangone, and his book is Busted. So the judge said that you destroyed the lives of many. Mm-hmm. Taxpayers had to pay for your fraud, right?
That's correct, yes.
Do you think about the hardships that you caused innocent people?
Of course. I mean, I bared those for many, many years. Thousands of people were affected. I mean, all of the depositors of the Digital Equipment Corporation were affected. The individuals that were affected in lives had to refinance their homes. They had homes with Barnstable Credit Union, so they went through a very difficult time. And of course, the credit union had deposit insurance, but the fund had to pay the losses on that. So
Right.
taxpayers did have to pay that. And that's a terrible thing. Yeah.
So, and your colleagues got prison sentences
that is
before
correct.
you did, right?
Yes, well, because I went on the run, they were sentenced prior to me.
Okay.
I received 24 years, and the next one to me was 15, 10, 3, and minor sentences after that.
Yeah,
That's
you're 24 years.
Yes.
So now you had an ankle bracelet, right?
That's correct, yes.
What did you have to do? I don't know much about ankle bracelet. Did you? How did you get it off?
It's hard plastic. I just cut it off with a razor blade on my way to the airport in the limousine that I was driving in to go to see my attorney.
Don't they know right away that you cut it off?
No, they don't, because it was out of the monitoring range. I'm in the car on the way to the airport, so they don't have they have the GPS today.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they did not have the GPS.
No, this was a time when it was snowing,
Yes,
and
exactly.
your airplane was delayed, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what did you do?
Well, just like Bugs Bunny, I took a left-hand turn at Albuquerque and just went in the opposite direction. I went to Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth, and from there worked my way back to where I was originally going to be planning to, in the Nashville, Tennessee area.
Yeah, this was, I guess, before they had all the security.
That is correct. Yeah.
At the airport.
Today, I think it would be much more difficult to do what I had done. That's correct. Yes.
And you had your passport taken away, so you couldn't really go overseas.
That is correct. Yes. Although they looked for me overseas, but I wasn't there.
How did you decide where to go?
I picked Birmingham, Alabama, or Nashville, Tennessee, only because it was in the center of the country, and it was easy to leave that place by rail, or plane, or car. So it seemed to be the most logical place in the center of America. Just like, some big corporations go to Atlanta and other places in the center.
Why didn't you go with your wife and daughter?
I think it would have been a burden for them, and they wouldn't have been able to handle the transactions and so on.
Was your wife supportive of you running?
No, not at all. Of course not. She really didn't know until the end, and it was difficult leaving her that morning. To do that, because we felt that it was going to be the final goodbye.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, so you had like $250,000 cash in your safe, right?
Well, we had quite a bit of cash. I was liquidating a lot of my stocks and a lot of the assets that I had to make the transition into having to be on the run. Yes.
Yeah. But the judge didn't take away your money, right?
Well, I mean, I had to give an accounting to the judge's appointed person.
Yeah.
And they allowed me to live on $8,000 a month while I was at the home on those 18 months I was on the bracelet.
Yeah. You were living in a fancy house.
Yes, yeah, we had a very lovely home.
Did you sell your Ferrari?
Yes, I liquidated all of my assets that I had that were liquidatable. Yes.
Did you try to make up financially to the people that you might have harmed?
Of course. I mean, the government forces you to do that.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. So I'm paying restitution, and I'll be paying restitution for the rest of my life. And anyone involved in those transactions will be paying restitution.
I see.
Even while I was in prison, I paid restitution.
Oh, I see. For the meager hourly wage that you got.
But it's still accountable.
What did you get, 18 cents an hour or something like that, or whatever it is?
It started off very small, yes.
Yeah. So you cut your ankle bracelet, went on the run, stayed in a hotel. There's a very funny story. I wonder if you could tell us where you stayed in a hotel where the FBI were having a little conference.
That was a little scary. That was my second day on the run. And I ended up checking into a hotel, and as soon as I checked in, it had a large sign that said FBI welcome. And I looked at the sign, and it was a regional meeting that all the FBI agents were having for training. And I looked at it and I said, wow, what am I going to do? Meanwhile, I had already checked in.
Yeah.
So I was a little concerned, so I took the car around the back, went into the room, it had a little kitchenette and so on. I figured I was going to be staying there for a while. And then when I heard a car drive up, I'm being a little paranoid looking out the window, and two agents came out of the car and went to the room next door. At that point in time, I decided it wasn't a good place, safe place to stay, so I went in, got the bus, and I went to another hotel real quickly. That was a scary moment. I thought for sure they were going to get me.
Did you have a plan, or did you just run?
Just
ran.
No plan at all.
It's because you wanted to avoid. I think there was a time when somebody told you, or you thought, that by the time you got out of prison, you'd be 73 or something like that.
That is correct.
Right?
Yeah, I would be in my 70s, and I really had purposed in my heart that I thought I would die in prison.
Yeah.
And that was probably part of the motivation of why I fled.
Yeah. So it was a federal prison
That's
that
correct,
you went
yeah.
to, which
FCI
is
Raybrook.
right. So tell us, in that time then, what happened to your marriage? What happened to your daughter? Did you keep up communication? Did the FBI have a tap on their phone?
Well, during the time I was on the run, I never called anyone because I knew those phones all would be tapped.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason for me not to think that way. But when you're on the run, if you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, they don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. So you're better off being, when you're on the fly, it's a little bit easier to move from town to town or from city to city within the geographical area you're in.
Right.
I had purposed that. I probably found that out from 60 Minutes or watching some other show where they had other people that were doing the similar type of things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too difficult in the beginning, but as time went on, I began to miss my family, and it got to be a very heavy burden on me.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. You're listening to New England Authors. We're talking with Richard Mangone, and you have a kind of a pun on your name here.
Yes,
Mangone.
Exactly.
Mangone. Yeah, Mangone. That's what you did. You fled.
Absconded, exactly.
Okay, so you lived like a year and a half away.
Yes.
And you lived recklessly.
Yes, I almost like I was looking to get caught, but I wasn't. But I did live very recklessly.
You gambled?
Yes, I went to a riverboat, and it's hard to get rid of old habits that you have, and they really weren't looking for me very hard.
So it seemed to me, from reading your book, it seemed to me that gambling was kind of your downfall because you became penniless, right? You couldn't take a job.
No, I did not have a good idea.
Was gambling your downfall? Have I got that?
No, I don't think so. I think that, gambling was a hobby. It got to be something that I needed, like some people need a drink. You do end up building up a opportunity that you want to end up gambling, but it wasn't something that was my downfall as much because I had plenty of money to gamble, except when I was on the run. But it was more of a hobby that became a lifestyle to me, and that's a terrible thing. It's not a good thing for anybody to do that. Yeah.
But you went back to trading and investing, venture investing.
Yeah. But what happens is in these type of situations is, back at the credit union, I always surrounded myself with people that were smarter than myself. And when I was on the run, I didn't have those type of people around me. I didn't have Morgan Stanley or some of the larger banks that I would be dealing with on information from the Fed and other places that I would get my information. So consequently, doing it myself, it became very, very hard. So whatever investments I made, poor decisions were made, and the money was lost.
And you got a new driver's license. You got a new identity.
Yes, yeah. We sent somebody out to California to get me a new driver's license, but that didn't work too well. Yeah. I got that idea from 60 Minutes as well.
Yes, someone who did that for a living for other people. Yeah. You're listening to New England Authors. Yes. So tell me, what happened to you? Okay, a year and a half, then your money dried up. What happened to you? Emotionally, physically? Tell us.
The thing is that it's like any situation that people get involved with, they're looking for a way out. And I couldn't find a way to get rid of all of the problems that I had. So I purposed to commit suicide. And I had bought the bottle of wine. I was going to get in my car and pipe from the rear exhaust into the window and end up committing suicide. And the evening before I had purposed to do this, I ended up watching TV, and they had an evangelist on, and the Lord Jesus Christ was hanging on the cross. And at that point in time, the evangelist put his two hands on the screen like this, and he said, "Match my hands to yours and receive the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior." So that's what I did. And after I did that, I ended up calling the toll-free number on the bottom, and I asked the young woman that was on the end of the line, I said, if a Christian just receiving the Lord commits suicide, would he go to heaven or hell? And their response was quite interesting, and it's kind of laughable. She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "This money is only for raising funds. This phone is only for raising funds, and not for advice." So at that point in time, being in the Bible Belt, it was easy for me to go to a local corner store and pick up a Bible and some tapes. And over the course of the next couple of months, I was able to turn myself in. It gave me enough courage to turn myself in.
And how did you do that?
I ended up going to a Catholic priest.
Right.
I was raised a Catholic, and I went to a Catholic priest and told him who I was. And several hours later, the FBI showed up and took me into custody. And then the marshals from Boston came and picked me up and took me into Boston.
So he got $25,000 for
that is correct. Yeah.
and which he gave to some charity, right?
It was great. Yeah, he gave it to $12,000 to a charity in Lowell, and one in another area that was close by. I thought that was a good idea. Yeah.
And so the FBI, were they nasty to you? Were they?
Oh, not at all. No. They were terrific. I mean, the fellow that showed up looked like he just came out of a movie. You know, 6'1", 2", a beautiful suit, and
oh yeah.
I mean, he was very friendly to me, and
Yeah.
I mean, he even said to me, "I'm sorry, I have to cuff you." He cuffed me, put me in the back of the car, and before he left me at Bowling Green, he stuck his hand through the prison cell and he said, "Richard, I want to let you know that you're the nicest criminal I ever met."
Oh yes.
And I said, "Wow, that was pretty cool."
Yeah. Okay.
He's retired now. I'll try to find him, but I couldn't find him. I was going to thank him.
So tell us about your life in federal prison. First of all, federal prison, if I understand it right, is a little nicer than some of the state prisons. Is
Yes,
that true?
it's a little bit safer. The feds do a better job in managing their inmates. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Did you feel threatened, abused, hated? How was your contact with the other people there?
It was tenuous at best. It depended on the given day, the motions of the inmates. But in general, it's a safe place to be, and I felt comfortable. Twice I was threatened in prison for my life, and both times, ironically, it was because I was just too happy. They felt that I had settled in too easily in my environment, and they wanted to do me some bodily harm. But in prison, there's a hierarchy, and if you go to the person that's responsible for each group, that you usually can work out those issues amongst ourselves.
Yeah. And you said you start to read the Bible
Yes,
there?
I spent my whole time reading the Bible. My 18 years in prison, I did nothing but study the Word of God. That's correct.
18 years. You didn't read other books?
Nope, didn't read books and didn't watch TV. Newspapers, nothing.
How about your contact with? No, tell us about your wife. She passed away, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
tell us.
she passed away of cancer, and unfortunately, because of my previous flight, the judge would not allow me to go to my wife's funeral or to my mother's funeral.
Oh, your mother's funeral.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Even though the warden approved it, the judge said no. So I spent my time, reading the Bible. I became more of a house mouse in reference to the going amongst the inmates, and it was good for me because even though I was well known within the prison, I needed time to reflect on the problems, the issues that I was having within myself.
Yeah.
So that solitude. Prison became a monastery of effects to me. It was like similar to a seminary that I was able to spend that time in prison.
I see. So you were sentenced for 24 years, and you ended up spending 18.
That's correct. Yeah,
That's a very long time.
It is. Yeah, true good time, and through an appeal that we filed, we were able to win back 26 months plus my good time that I served.
Yeah.
And but it was good for me to be away. I really needed that time to reflect on the things that we had done and reflect on my life.
Now, your book, Busted, ends with you at a halfway house after prison.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened since then?
Well, I've been blessed to open up a prison ministry, and I work as a volunteer for the U.S. Probation Department, and I'm also going into the state facilities in New York. And I've been visiting churches. And I've been visiting churches in Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and upstate New York. And it's been a blessing to be able to go in and share my testimony with the people. And it's a good way for me also to get the message out about the book.
So tell me, you were in prison in 2008 with the economic meltdown.
That's correct, yes.
What did you think of Goldman Sachs and the players who were kind of like you but didn't get any prison time?
I must profess, you got to remember, I wasn't reading and watching TV, so I kind of missed that. I missed that whole thing.
You missed it, wow.
I mean, it was not even mentioned in the book. I didn't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah.
And I overheard the men talking about it. But it didn't surprise me based on the vehicles that they were extending themselves in and all these different monetary directions they were going in. It didn't surprise me at all that they were going to have that kind of problem.
Is there something that you would recommend to the banking industry that we have better controls?
Well, I'm not really competent enough to answer that question. Been out of it for so long, I think it would be very hard for me to comment on that.
Yeah.
It really would be difficult, yeah.
Yeah, so what's your next activity? Just,
Well, I mean,
ministering
to inmates and trying to help them. I think of what happened with Epstein, the fellow that committed suicide.
Yeah.
That was a suicide companion in prison for 10 years. And that was a shame that he was able to do that. If he was at the prison I was at, that never would have happened.
Yeah.
He would have been on constant watch.
Right.
Somebody dropped the ball there,
Yeah.
and that's a shame. But if we could save one through the book, and in ways of ministering to them through the courthouse or through going into the prison, it would be important for us to do that.
Now, could you tell us maybe one or two interesting cellmates that you had? We were talking about one earlier here. Tell us, there's someone involved in or he said he was involved in Isabella Stewart Gardner.
Well, I met a lot of interesting people there. I mean, we actually had a live Antichrist in prison with us. His name was Yahweh Ben Yahweh, and he's gone now. He died of prostate cancer, but he was at Raybrook, and he had a following of over 10,000 people. It was a cult in Florida, and a very, very rich man, and he was in prison, and you meet all varieties of people in prison. We had Congressman Trafficant was in prison with us from Youngstown, Ohio. We had state troopers and Boston policemen. You name it, we had all kinds. And at one point, going back to court, I was with Miles Connor, and he had interesting stories to talk about the heist and so on.
The
feds
Isabella
interviewed
Stewart
him.
Gardner heist.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful story. Your book is called Busted, and this is New England Authors. We're recording here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We broadcast on stations throughout the region. If you missed an episode, go to YouTube, and remember, watch locally.